Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast. Today we have Rochelle Carrington. She's the president and CEO of Sandler Training. And today we're going to be talking about some emotional blueprinting. Rochelle, welcome to the EO Wonder podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So what is emotional blueprinting?
That is a great question because it's a great tagline, but nobody really knows exactly what that is. So emotional blueprinting is really a protocol that we've developed to help successful people overcome their mental roadblocks. A lot of times entrepreneurs and successful people have these self-sabotaging behaviors that they do. And no matter how hard they try to get to their goals, they keep running into these roadblocks. And so what emotional blueprinting does is helps them to tap into their subconscious mind, figure out what those roadblocks are, and rewire their subconscious so that now it works with their conscious mind and they're allowed to, and they're able to get to their goals much, much faster. And so it's really about creating a different blueprint for your mind.
And it's so key as entrepreneurs. You know, this is the Entrepreneur Podcast for the Entrepreneurs Organization. And as I mentioned earlier, you're also the president of Sandler Training. So it's really important for people to know that this emotional blueprinting can also help with their businesses. People are like, well, why should I do it? Right.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, we work with really mostly business owners as well as a lot of times their families too. And, you know, what happens with entrepreneurs is they're running around and they're doing so many different things and they've got goals and they're very, driven, competitive, ambitious types of people. But what they find is that there's something that holds them back. And for those who have developed some self-awareness and also done any sort of personal growth, they figure out they've got a roadblock. And for most people, they just can't figure out what to do about it. And the reason is because it's so deeply held in the subconscious. Because one of the things to think about is that when we're growing up, from that age of 0 to 7 years old, we get imprinted. And basically what we do is we decide as young children who we are, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, what we're good at, what we're not good at. And our family helps us to decide that, and our teachers and all the different people that we interact with. And so what happens is, as we have these experiences when we're little kids, we make these decisions about ourselves. What happens for most people is they're still living out those decisions, even though they're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. And so what happens is that they are basically working off a software that's really, really old. So if you think about your computer, you're constantly updating your software. If you don't, it runs very, very slowly. If you think about yourself at 30, 40, 50, 60, a lot of times what will happen is something is happening in your life, you're experiencing something, your subconscious goes, have I experienced this before? It takes you back to when you were, let's just say 4 years old, and however you would have reacted in a similar situation at 4, you're now reacting in a similar situation at 44. But you don't know that's happening because that's all behind the scenes. And so what this does is emotional blueprinting updates that blueprint that you had at 4, which was great then, but you don't need to be reacting in that same way at 44. We update that so that you stop the self-sabotage, you stop the roadblocks, and that helps with any sort of business. People get to their goals faster, all different opportunities start to come to them. All sorts of things that they think are just coincidences are things that they've actually been, much more been opened up to because they've changed their computer software program in their mind.
So what is the first step for someone to uncover this or understand this?
I think the first step is to really if you're going to do something on your own, is to really take a look at, where am I getting triggered? What are the situations where I get angry or fearful or sad in a way that is probably above and beyond, that is not necessarily something that is valid, let's say. And so you look for those triggers, and then you take a look and see, what sort of triggers do I constantly get? What are the things that that are in common in those things? And then, I mean, in all, seriousness, you really need somebody to help you walk through and figure out when that got created. But the more awareness work that you can do ahead of time to figure out what some of those triggers are and where those problem behaviors are, helps to, get you further along the way.
So you are also an NLP trainer. Is this related to NLP? Or maybe you can explain to everyone what NLP is?
Yes, NLP is short for neuro linguistic programming. And, very kind of to summarize it or to make it very simple, it's really just the way that we communicate. And it's the way that we have different communication patterns that are just innate in us. And so in the work that we do, we use some NLP patterns. It's not really training people on NLP, but we do have to understand the communication styles of people and what has already been hardwired into them in order to understand how best to coach them into that next step where they want to go.
Wow. So you do integrate NLP within emotional blueprinting.
Yes, we are really using a lot of different protocols. There's a lot of neuroscience that goes into it. There's a lot of science that is pretty interesting because now scientists have figured out that all of your emotions are imprinted in every single cell, every gene of your body has an emotion that is attached to it. And so what happens over time is that sometimes you may experience something, a negative experience at some point in your life, and that emotion doesn't get released. It gets trapped in your body. And then you just start to react in that same emotion in experiences that you have that are similar to the first one in which it got trapped. And so there's a lot of neuroscience, there's a lot of, genetic modeling that goes into it as well as NLP and just really working with the subconscious. So it sounds very woo-woo, but there's a lot of science behind it.
Yeah, and it's also training your brain, to really slow down and really experience what's happening. Because I think what happens is now I'm right now, getting trained to be a certified as a mindfulness teacher through the UC Berkeley Good Science Center. And it's really being able to slow the brain down because we just move so quickly, and
Right.
or like you said, not really, really understand these emotions and it gets trapped. Where you could actually sit with emotion, it'll probably only linger about 15 to 20 seconds, but a lot of people just want out, right?
Right. There's a lot of emotional repression. And also in business, no one talks about emotions. You're not supposed to have emotion in business. You're supposed to just go out there and get the goal and go and do whatever the business relation is about. And so people don't generally think about how am I feeling, but your feelings are really your GPS. So, and we work a lot with people at, thinking about frequency and the fact that we are all really just energy. And as such, we all emit a frequency. We can either emit a very high frequency or we can emit a very low frequency. And so for people who are, entrepreneurs and people that have that drive for success, if you can stay at a high frequency, that is where everything you want lives, is at that high frequency. And you're at high frequency when you're feeling things like peace and contentment and joy and happiness and all of those great emotions, love and those things. However, we have moments where we are in low frequency, where we are angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or all of those negative things. And so the challenge and really what we retrain people's minds is to stop with those low frequency emotions and stay at high frequency, because everything you don't want is at low frequency. Everything you do want is at high frequency. And so we give them a lot of tools and just rewire all the negative stuff out. And then we restore all the positive things from the past and bring it into the present and then blow it out into the future. And that's why all of a sudden people go, I've got all these opportunities coming to me that I've never seen before. I think somebody, we've got a client whose son just wrote him an incredible letter thanking him for, being such a great dad. He was like, he's never done anything like this before. He's 24 years old. Like, why? I don't know why he did this. I said, well, he can feel your frequency has changed. And so he's responding to that. So all these wonderful things happen, businesses grow, relationships change, people, they decrease symptoms of disease. Sometimes they get rid of disease. They have weight loss. I mean, there's a lot of things that get tied to all of these emotions that just get trapped within us. And we don't know on our own what those are. It's very, very difficult to figure out what they are unless you've been trained on how to see it and then how to help people release it.
Is there a tool you could share? You said you mentioned that there are tools, or do they have to first be assessed before they can use the tools?
Yeah, you first have to be assessed. There are a few really good books out there that people could read, though. There's one called The Emotion Code, which is a great book that talks a lot about trapped emotions, and it will teach you a little bit on how you can release some of those yourself. There's also another great book called Feelings Buried Alive Don't Die. And that really talks about the idea of when you repress feelings, what happens and how those contribute to a lot of issues and a lot of disease and different things like that. So there's some great books out there that people can read just to get a start on how this all works. Because it sounds a little crazy in the beginning.
I think that all entrepreneurs are crazy, so we're willing to try great things, right? We're sort of like the magicians who make the invisible visible. So any type of tools that can help us get more of that, I think that they really embrace it. So, uh,
Absolutely.
what was the catalyst for you to dive into this work, or were you always emotionally cohesive?
No, of course not. I'm human just like everybody else. No, the reason this was because I've been a business owner for 20 something years, and I have had a lot of goals just like everyone else. And I came to a point where I was very frustrated because I was doing all the right things and I was not reaching the goals that I had, and it was taking too long and I was losing patience and all those sorts of things. And so I stumbled upon this concept about 5 years ago. And I actually was a client first. I went in and did all of this as a client because I thought I got to get rid of my roadblocks. Even though I studied roadblocks and I help people with that, I didn't know this piece of it. And so I went in as a client. My life got completely transformed. It was just amazing. And it's very, very quick. We work with people for 90 days. That's it. In 90 days, everything changes. So I did it as a client. And then because it was such a huge life transformation for me, I just said, I got to do this. Like, more people need to experience this because it just changes everything. People are happier. They're more peaceful. They sleep better. I mean, just everything changes. So yeah, I was a product of the product.
Oh, well, what a wonderful product you ended up. Your
Yes.
your proof is in the pudding, right? So,
Right.
if maybe you can also describe to everyone what Sound Training does, because this is a global podcast that is listened to by tens of thousands of entrepreneurs around the world. They may not know what Sandler is, and then it'll probably make sense about how you were helping other people with their roadblocks. And
Right. So I'm not affiliated with Sandler anymore. I've got my own company called Bulletproof Management, but I was with Sandler for about 13 years. And what Sandler does is sales and management training. When I was affiliated with that organization, I really delved into the whole mindset piece of it. So I did a lot of sales training, a lot of management training, but also a lot of mindset, because no matter what you do, if you know the technique and you know the behaviors from a sales standpoint, behaviors are things like you've got to go prospect and find, people to talk to and that sort of thing. You can know all of that, but if the language in your head tells you you shouldn't do that, that you're not allowed to ask certain questions on a sales call, that you're being greedy if you charge more money than maybe the competition. If you've got that kind of head trash running in your head, it will stop you from doing all the things you need to do. And so that, experience training hundreds and thousands of salespeople and CEOs and managers and things for that length of time really got me to dive into the mindset. And I just thought it was absolutely fascinating. And so now with Bulletproof Management, we're really focusing on that mindset piece, all that emotional blueprinting, because that, in my opinion, is something that's really missing in the marketplace, that not enough people know how to get rid of those roadblocks in a very quick way that lasts forever. Once you do it, once you rewire your subconscious, it's done. You don't have to go back, 6 months later and redo anything. So you can do it in 90 days, and then you just move on and continue on with everything else that you want to accomplish in your life.
And it leads to more sales, more productivity, better relationships with, looks like your father and son relationships are improved, family relationships, your spouse. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. It's amazing how much, if you think about, even though you're an entrepreneur and we focus so much on business and where roadblocks are in business, wherever they are in business, it also plays out everywhere else in your life. It plays out in health, it plays out in relationships. And so it really has an impact on all of those things. And, a lot of the entrepreneurs that come to us are family oriented people, and they want to set the bar and they want to be the role model in their family. They want to model great behavior for their children and their spouse, their significant other, and even their other family members. And so that's why a lot of times we'll start working with a CEO and they get their spouse involved and their kids involved, because they want all of their family to know how to do this, because it just makes such a big difference in the way that they interact in the world.
And I think we were introduced through Michael, who's also an EOLA member, and he was
Yes.
raving about you, and that's how we got connected, because he said that it was a permanent impact that you had on his
Yes.
life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's the nice part of it. A lot of people say, is it something like talk therapy? Is that the kind of thing that we're doing? And I always say, it's absolutely nothing like that. Talk therapy is a lot of reliving the past and kind of going over and over and telling that story over and over again. And the main issue with that is that it wires it deeper into your brain. We don't go into, the stories of the past and have anyone have to tell us what happened, embarrassing stories or anything like that. They can keep private information private, but we can still fix things from the past that are affecting them now. And then, like I said, once that is rewired, it's a permanent rewiring. And so that's just an amazing thing for people, that you don't have to do it forever.
Yeah. And could you share some personal ahas that you got from doing this work? Like, how did you transform personally?
Well, one of the things that I was experiencing before I went through this, and I think a lot of people do this, although they may not talk about it, is, that moment when you first wake up and everything starts to flood into you about all the things you need to do and the problems, and, the list is just going on forever. And so I would wake up with this feeling of dread. And even though I loved what I was doing and it was successful, it would still have this major feeling of dread. And so that was one of the things that I was like, I don't want to wake up like that anymore. I want to wake up excited. I want to wake up peaceful. And so that was one of the biggest things that I saw when I went through the process and finished everything. The next day, I woke up and I remember just going like, I feel different. Like, what? I don't feel like myself, because I was so used to feeling the dread. And I went, I feel happy. I feel light. I'm not thinking about the problems. I'm not focusing on any of that stuff. So that was a huge transformation. And that just spread out into everything for me.
Yeah, Buddhist philosophy has a concept of the monkey mind, where your mind swings from both fear to doubt. And immediately, you're absolutely right. When you wake up in the morning, you're immediately thinking about the future. Like, oh, look at
Right.
all the future to-do lists that I have to
Right.
do. I have to check all
Right.
these boxes. I got to reach all those goals. When you can actually realign your mind and be present, then you can say, what am I more interested in? What is a conclusion that I want to have, or intention in my life?
Right, absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I think people can do, that it's simple but not necessarily easy, is just focus on what you want. We spend so much time focusing on what we don't want. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to be late. I don't want to lose this deal. I don't want to hire the wrong person. And what we need to do is watch the language. And anytime you say, I don't want something, reframe that to, what do you want? because since we are energy, and a lot of people probably know that your thoughts become your reality, the more you focus on what you don't want is the more you get it. When you flip that and you focus on what you do want, I want to be on time. So if I tell myself I want to be on time, I'm going to do the things that make me on time, rather than I don't want to be late. And then all of a sudden I find myself, all stressed out and running around harried, trying not to be late. So there's just that simple switch, but you really have to be cognizant about how you talk to yourself and what you say, because most of the time we say it so much, we're so used to it, we don't even notice it. So you really got to pay attention and just start flipping that. And that right there will take away a lot of fear, anxiety, and doubt, because you're just focused on the positive thing, what you want. And then it's subconscious mind, help me to go do those things. And you will do that much more easily. So that's a really easy tip for people.
And that could also work with abundance, like an abundance mindset. I don't
Yes.
have this, I didn't get this client, but look at all the clients you had in the past.
Right, right. Absolutely. And what I always tell people is, people worry about the pipeline, right? Like it's getting thin. I don't have enough in there. And one of the best ways to think about that is prospects are like cars on a highway. Sometimes there's a lot of cars on that highway. Sometimes there's just a few. Sometimes they come one every 2 hours, but there's never a time at which there are no cars ever, and there's not another car coming down that highway. So they're always coming down. It is just how many are coming at, one particular time. So there's never going to be a point where you're going to run out of prospects. It just doesn't happen. I've been saying forever and never have run out of prospects. So it's really about how you go find them and how much work and effort you're putting into it, but they're always there. So if you lose one, there's always going to be another one to replace it. And perhaps it's a better one than the one that you were trying to close in the first place.
Right. So removing that scarcity mindset and just knowing that and having that expectation that there will be
Yes.
prospects, right, is probably the
Right.
first key.
There will be.
When you were
Absolutely.
talking
And
about,
you still have to do the work. You
yes,
can't just sit there and wish for it to happen. You got to do the work, but there are always new ones coming down.
I think that that's true, because a lot of times when people read books like The Secret and you're manifesting things, work still needs to happen. But it
Yes, the
first
word.
starts, as you said, with deciding what you want. A lot
Right.
of people don't know what they want.
No, they don't. They
Yeah.
don't. They know what they don't want. Everybody knows what they don't want.
Yeah.
But I think that people have challenges figuring out what they want because they feel like it's too greedy. That if I want it and I don't get it, then it means I'm a failure. It means I've done something wrong. It means there's something wrong with me. Or they have a core belief that they're not worthy of it, or they don't deserve it, or something around those lines. So they just say, I'm just going to let life happen. And, that is one way to live, but you certainly won't get to the destination you really want if you just are kind of meandering around. There's going to be a lot of paths you go down that are you didn't really need to.
Yeah. And having that clarity, you had mentioned destination, is so key, because let's say you are on your way to somewhere, right? The first thing you have to put in the GPS is, where are you going to go? Like,
Right.
and sometimes because our mind is moving, well, I want to go here, then I want to go there. And so your GPS gets super confused. It
Right.
literally takes you literally. And if you don't know where you're going, then that becomes
Yes.
problematic. Yeah.
Yes. And your subconscious will do the same thing. If you don't tell it where you want to go, it'll just take you meandering around anywhere. And, if you're goal oriented, most people don't want that to happen. They want to have the straight line. They don't want to be, weaving back and forth all over the place and wasting time.
Yeah. Well, you sound like such a, stable, wonderful entrepreneur. How can someone be like you? Like, what are your daily habits? What do you read? What does your daily schedule look like? Your routines?
I'm very routine oriented, very disciplined, but I work out every day, and that can sound like overkill to a lot of people, but I love it. And so 7 days a week workout. I get up early. I get up at, 4:30, 5:30, something like that. And first thing I do is first I just do some breathing. And I also do a visualization when I'm just lying in bed when I first wake up. And that visualization is something that we teach people. And it really is, who are you at your best self? What does that look like? How does that feel? What do you hear when you are at your best self? And so you get that picture and you just sort of visualize that, just, and feel it for a couple of minutes. And then off to the gym. And I do a lot of fasting, and I've trained myself to be very calendar oriented. So whatever's on the calendar, that the calendar is my boss, basically. If I have something on there, even if I don't want to do it, if it's on there, I've got to do that. And so it's really just about going through the day and, meeting with clients, just like most everybody else does, and making sure that, I'm getting enough sleep and all those sorts of things. I think learning is a huge piece, and I would probably say I'm an addict as far as that's concerned. More, webinars and podcasts. I'm watching YouTube all the time. When I'm getting ready in the morning, I'm watching YouTube. I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do, and I don't even have cable, but when I do watch it, it's, I want to learn something as much as possible. There are times when I just want to watch trash like anybody else, but most of the time, I want to do an autobiography or something like that so that I can really learn something. And then there's so many great business books and self-help books that people can read that are really, really interesting. And so I probably read, a couple of books a month and try to take some time, not every day, but a few days a week where I can just sit down, read for half an hour, take notes from it, and take action from it. Because a lot of people are reading books, but then you don't take any action. So writing in the corner, here's what I'm going to do from this, and then transferring that into my computer so I can actually execute. That's a typical day, along with, family and all that good stuff too.
So what is your workout like? Is it weights? Is it cardio, yoga?
Yeah, no, I'm not good at yoga. I feel like if I'm not completely sweating and exhausted at the end, then I didn't do anything. I know that's probably the wrong attitude on that, the wrong outlook. A lot of people will say, you got to do yoga. It's wonderful, but it's not my love. So I do a lot of weights and a lot of high intensity training. And, my go-to is I love the Beachbody apps, where you can go on there and become a member, and they've got just, hundreds and hundreds of workouts that you can do. Great trainers on there, and I follow a lot of those. That way I don't have to think. I just do whatever they tell me to do.
Yeah. And I think that that's why a habit is so important, the right type of habit, because I think someone had mentioned earlier that in another podcast that we fall to the level of our training. So if we have
Right.
these habits that are holding us up, even when there is a catastrophe, even if there is a crisis, then you can always go back to that.
Absolutely. And I think with exercise, a lot of people struggle with that. I know I did years ago. And what I decided is that at the time I was working out probably 4 days a week. My only decision every week was, what days do I not work out? And I would decide that ahead of time. And all the other days I worked out. And that was just the way that it was. It wasn't in the morning when I wake up, do I work out? Do I not work out? It was, if I decided on Sunday that my workout is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, that's what it is. If it's Monday, I'm working out. That's just the way that it went. And then I got very, I just loved the endorphins and the way that it changes your body and everything like that. And so, I went overkill and started doing 7 days. But I think if you really think about, it's not a question of, do I do it? Do I not do it? It's which days am I not doing it? And the rest of them I do it. And there's no question, I think Tony Robbins says you don't negotiate with yourself in the morning. You already figure out what you're going to do the night before, because you're a genius the night before when you make these decisions about what you're going to do the next day. But then when you wake up, that's when you start acting like, a 4-year-old, where you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't feel like it. You got to go with the genius the night before. That was the smart person deciding what to do the next day. And don't get into that, what do I feel like? Do I want to? Do I not? It's really not about that. You just do it. And, it's not about whether you want to or not.
Right, because it's so important, and I think exercise is definitely one of those keystone habits that lead to better habits. I also work out every single day too, and how I started doing that is had a competition with my forum mates in EO, and so we all have
Oh,
the
no.
Apple Watch, and then we would just watch each other and then then I started getting competitive, waking up at like 5
Yes.
a.m. trying to get my 10,000, 20,000 steps in before everyone else. But it helped because even though the challenge is off, I'm still doing it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the more that you can just kind of relate to that is just who you are. Everyone has a description of themselves, and they'll say something like, I'm a business owner, I'm a mom, etc. Part of my description, if I were to describe myself, is I work out 7 days a week. It's just part of who I am, just like I would say my height and my hair color and my eye color. I don't question those things because I can look in the mirror and I see them every day. And so that fitness level, or, if you are really into, growth, and it's like, I'm a reader, I read books, like that becomes part of who you are. And just like the way that you look. So when you look in the mirror, all those things are incorporated into that. And when you incorporate it into who you are, that's when it's a solidified habit. You can't not do it because it's part of who you are.
I absolutely love that. There's that new book, Magic Words, How to Get Anything That You Want. And one of the suggestions he said was exactly what you said. Add an ER to whatever you want. And so when they were trying to get people to vote, it wasn't like, are you going to vote? Can you be a voter?
Right.
Rather than saying, can you contribute to this? Can you be a giver? Right.
Right.
I just wish that
Right.
there was one for like an athlete leader, an athleter, a workouter, right? We need one, an
You can be a
exerciser,
workouter.
an
Right, an
exerciser,
exerciser. Right,
or
right.
an
I
athlete.
used
Yeah.
to say that to my girl. I've got two girls, and when they were younger, I would say, be a listener. Make sure you're a listener. And I didn't even think about it at the time. It was just something that I said. But now that you said put the ER rather than telling them listen, I would just say be a good listener. So and they responded really well to that. So that's a really good tip. I didn't even know that was happening at the time.
Yeah. You were already naturally doing it, naturally influencing people with that ER at the end of it.
Sometimes we stumble into these things, right?
Yeah, definitely. So what type of fasting did you do? Are you doing like intermittent fasting? Or do you like not
I
eat
do.
on Mondays? Okay.
Yes, I do a couple things. I do 1 day fasts, and I do those once a week. And then once a month, I'll do a 3 day fast. And then I also will sometimes do what they call an OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. So I usually will just I generally skip breakfast anyway. And if I eat, I'm going to eat, a later lunch at 1 or something like that. And then there are some days when, I'll just go all the way to dinner, which is the OMADing principle. But I just recently tried twice the 3 day fast, and the first day, is fairly easy. The second day is kind of tough, and then the third day you're a little bit used to it as well. But when that dinner comes, you're just like, I am ready. You just want that food. But it's amazing what it does with your body and the cell regeneration, and there's just so many amazing health benefits to it that I think a lot of people are unaware of. Because when I tell people I'm doing a 3 day fast, the first thing my mom said is, that's not good for you. You shouldn't do that. I'm like, well, actually it is. So it's really, the intermittent fasting is a great, great tool.
Well, they say it's one of the keys for longevity, being lean,
Yes. Yes.
right? It cuts out all the inflammation. When I was doing I had a meditation practice. It was every Monday, and really, it was just the mindset because you're just like, oh my God, what about the food? And then later on, it's really your mind. You really aren't that hungry in the very beginning, as
No.
long as you can drink water, right? You can drink water,
Right.
right?
Right. I drink water, I drink coffee, I drink tea. And the coffee is really helpful, but nothing in it. You can't put any of the cream
Dunkin'
or
Donuts
milk or
creamer.
stuff. Yeah, no, there's none of that, unfortunately. But, it really is just a mindset that our bodies can actually go longer without food than we think. We don't need to eat 3 meals a day. It's not necessary. You're not going to shrivel up. You're not going to die. And like you said, the longevity and the cells turning over, and really it just helps with so much disease. And I had also read, when I started looking into it, that it helped you to look younger. So I was like, I'm in just for that.
Just for
That sounds good to me.
Yeah,
I'll do
but it
it.
makes sense, because if you think about how our bodies were made, to maybe to hunt or gather food, it's not as readily available just going to the refrigerator and just opening up or grabbing a snack.
Right, right. Absolutely.
So it must have been easier. I don't know if it's true, easier for you to have your habits during COVID when you weren't going out and about or, traveling or anything like that, or is it the same?
It's pretty
In
much the same. Yeah, it was pretty much the same schedule. I did a lot of working out at home anyway. And so doing that during COVID was, I still would work out in my basement. So that was pretty simple. I think the harder thing was for many people was having your kids there and dealing with all of that, trying to do your business and, focus and have your kids around at the same time and make sure that they're getting their lunch and all those things that they need. I think that was probably the more difficult part.
Yeah, managing that schedule. How old are your kids? Your daughters?
My daughters now are 13 and 18.
Wow.
So the nice thing for me, I don't want to complain about the COVID. I know there were a lot of people with very young kids. I mean, mine were able to, do what they needed to do without a lot of help, which is very different than people who had, kids in kindergarten and first grade and second grade that were literally going out of their minds. So no complaints on my end.
Yeah, I have a 14 and 16-year-old, and so back then they were around that age, so it was definitely much easier. Yeah, when you don't
Yeah,
see like people running in the back of the
right.
it's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see that a lot. Like, oh,
Yeah. The
yeah,
little kid kind of,
yeah.
and with the head in the Zoom, and the parents like, oh my gosh, like trying to shoo them away.
Do you remember that? I think it was someone getting interviewed by BBC, and I think it was like an economist or something like that. And the kid came in.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Mom
I
is
do.
like crawling and trying to grab the
Yeah,
kid.
exactly. Like
Like,
trying to pull the kid
yeah,
out.
well, that yeah, those are
It
good
shows that
times.
everyone's human.
Yeah.
We all have lives outside of the business that we do and all of that. And so it showed a little bit of that. I think it gave people a little more, patience and humanity and that sort of thing to see that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good times.
Yeah. Let's not go back there.
Yeah, exactly. So what are you reading now? What's on your do you do Audible or physical
I don't do
books?
Audible. I used to do a lot of Audible because prior to, COVID, I had an office that I was going to and I would drive half an hour and I would just put it on then. So now I'm actually reading because I like to take notes. And so one of the challenges I had with Audible was, I would listen to it while I was getting ready, but then I always had to have a pad of paper next to me. So now I just like I like the physical book so that I can highlight and write in the corners and everything like that. And so one of the books I'm reading right now is The Gene Keys, which is
Oh
a
yeah, I have that too.
huge, huge book.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah.
Where's mine? Sorry, I have mine right down
I can
there.
I can see a large
Yeah,
book on your
yeah,
bookshelf, and it's probably that one because it's about 500 pages or so, maybe more. But it's
yeah.
really just all about how your genetic coding works with your subconscious mind, and it's fascinating how that works. So that's one of them that I'm delving into now.
Yeah, and you can take a test, right? It's genekeys.com or something like
Yes.
that, and then you figure out, like, what it is, like, what you're meant
Right.
to do. Yeah, that's
Right.
fascinating. I need to get
Right.
back. That's a good reminder for me to get back to the hidden purpose in your DNA.
Yes, yes. It tells you about that. And then there's about 4 books after that that help you to decipher what your assessment is. And it's one of the things that we do with a lot of people as well, because it's challenging. Number one, to read the 500-page book is a lot. And then to be able to decipher your own assessment and what is your genetic code and where are the weaknesses and the strengths within it. And then what do you do about it? You know, and so we kind of help people walk through, protocols to help them get to that genius part of their genetic code and not, what they would call in the book, the shadow or the low frequency things that we can stumble into.
So do you also dive into things like the Enneagram and Myers-Briggs?
I have done one. I have done an Enneagram, and it's fascinating as well. But we haven't, we haven't implemented that into our business protocols at this point. But there's just so many amazing assessments out there that, if you want to find things out about yourself, Myers-Briggs is a great one. DISC is one that I love. I mean, that just explains the entire world and how everybody works. And it's really fun. I do a lot of training around that as well for groups to understand how they communicate, why you do what you do, and then understanding why everyone else around you does what they do and how do you best communicate given the different styles. So that's just some wonderful, wonderful information about yourself.
What is your DISC profile? I'm a high I. I'm a high high D.
That's why you do a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah,
of course you are.
Exactly. Makes sense.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I'm a 50% D and 50% I. So the D is for those people that aren't familiar with it, is the type of person who is very competitive, goes after goals, very focused, just doesn't have a lot of patience. That's kind of one of the downsides, wants to win. And then the I, which you said that you are as well, is that people person, the one who is, more extroverted, loves to be around people, very enthusiastic and fun and the life of the party and all of that. So I've got both the D and the I, which sometimes seem like they can, conflict. Because on the one side, it's, I just want to get my stuff done. And then on the other side, it's like, oh, I love being around people. So those are the two styles that I am.
Can you tell everyone what the S and the C stands for too?
Sure. So the S, very simply, is it's really about 40% of people. Most people are S's. Although most entrepreneurs are generally D's or I's, but not all of them. But the S are the people who are really great listeners. They like the steady, stable environment around them. They don't like change. They just want to do the same thing all the time. And they don't like conflict. So a lot of times S's will not tell you if they're upset. They will keep it to themselves. And the only way you'll hear about it is if it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? The situation gets so bad, it's stacked up so many times that then they'll blow up. But they have a very long fuse. And then the C's are the people that are analytical and logical and rational, and they tend to be perfectionists. They don't want to ever make a mistake. So they've got very long decision processes, and they want all of the data. And they also tend to be more kind of people that like to just work on their own. They don't like to be around people a lot. So you've got the D's and the I's that are extroverts typically, and the S's and the C's that are introverts. But you can have any combination of any of those things. Most people are 2. Some people have 3. Everyone has all of it, but what happens is by the age of 16, we have 2 of them that are really the way that we act, say 90% of the time. So if you're a DI, you can act like a C. I can look at spreadsheets and data and all of that if necessary, but I don't like to live in that world because it just is not my natural, my natural desire to look at numbers all day long. So there are other people that love to look at the numbers and would not want to go out and, be talking to people and doing things related to selling. So there's no good or bad. It's just knowing what it is that you are so that you know what your strengths are, and then being able to recognize it in other people so that you can respond to them in the way that makes the most sense for them. So it's really amazing stuff. And it explains a lot of relationship things too, where people are like, now I understand why my wife does that or why my husband does that. It's not because they're trying to annoy me. It's just because they need data. They don't want to make a mistake. That's why it takes them so long to decide something. So when people have those epiphanies, it's just like, oh, now I can be patient with that person. I understand it now. So that's why I think it's such great stuff to know.
And same with your employees as well.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
It
Definitely. It's
makes
a
it
great thing. Go ahead. I was going to say it's a great thing to understand your employees, and also there are certain styles that when you look at your entire team, you may have too many of one style and you need to bring in a new one. Or if you look at a team that is all eyes, you might need somebody a little more calm, like an S in there. Or you might need somebody who's a little more, got attention to detail and bring a C in there. But then also know that that C could have a challenging time being with a lot of extroverts. And so really just figuring out what sort of communication style is best for the role and best for the team is really important. So it's a great hiring tool as well.
Yeah, you definitely want your CFO to be a C, right?
Yes, yes. I always say to people, we don't want eyes building bridges because they would look pretty. They'd be really fun. They'd be colorful. There'd be all sorts of lights on them, but they would probably fall down. You want C's to build the bridges because they're going to make sure those things stand up forever.
Because they've done their homework.
Yeah, exactly. The eyes are just having too much fun, putting the ideas together. The C is actually making sure the ideas will work.
Exactly. Interviewing all the people that may be on the bridge or want to go on the
Yes,
bridge. Yeah.
yes, yes, absolutely.
So what are you looking forward to most in 2023?
Wow, that is a really great question. Well, I'm looking forward to summer and better weather. And I take a trip with my girls every summer for 2 weeks. And so we are in the midst of figuring out where we're going. And so I'm really looking forward to that in the next few months. That's the big thing.
Where have you been with them in the past that you've loved?
We have we've been all over the place. We've been to France a couple of times. We've been to Thailand and Cambodia and Laos. We've been to Mexico. We've been to Panama, London, England. So we've been all over the place. I try to take them to something that is going to be, unique. They can see something different. And we always try to speak the language, even though, most of the time we're obviously very poor at it, but just to attempt anyway, to speak something and really kind of go to the places where the locals will go versus where all the tourists go. So, and now that my girls are older, I let them plan the trips. And so that's always interesting because they're trying to figure out like, okay, what do I like to do? What do they like to do? And how do we combine all these different things? So it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's world school with mom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. It's always an adventure. Something usually goes wrong. So also teaches them that sometimes you have to be flexible. We've showed up at the wrong hotel sometimes, and you got to just like go with it and figure out what that next step is. So I think they've gotten hopefully, some good lessons around those things when plans don't exactly go the way you thought they would, and you just need to pivot. And it also just is great experiences and fun memories and things they can make fun of me for. So that's always good for them too.
Yes, they can be their own architect of their mind, right?
Yes,
You're not
yes.
like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And,
Absolutely.
and they have the best teacher, especially because you're also modeling it. I think that's the one
Yes.
thing people, they won't do what you say, but they'll do what you do.
Right, right, absolutely. And it is amazing. Yeah, I've been teaching them these things since they were really little. And, a lot of times, especially when they're teenagers, I'm like, I don't think they've listened to anything I've said. And then later on, they'll repeat something back, or if I'm having a rough day, they'll give me some advice that was something similar to what I had told them. And I did actually get a thank you from my 18-year-old before she went to college and said, thank you for all the stuff you taught me. I know you didn't think I listened to anything, but I did. And I was like, oh, something
Oh,
worked.
that's so
So
sweet.
it's fun. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I think that's so wonderful because as women entrepreneurs, I think one of the things that we really want to make sure, besides growing a very successful business, is to have a successful family,
Yes,
that's healthy and
right.
a,
And
a great
strong
goal.
children, really strong children that are able to go out there and deal with whatever the situation is and have a very strong mindset so that no matter what comes at them, they're able to bounce back. And I think that is a really, really important thing, especially for kids today with all the different things that they're dealing with. They're very different than what we had to deal with. And so it's really important for them to have that mindset so they know who they are, they know what their worth is, and they can go out there and make whatever the impact is that they were meant to make in the world and feel good about it. So I think that's a really important piece for the kids.
Yeah, resilience.
Yes, absolutely. Resilience. More people need to be resilient.
Yeah, I just recently, at my daughter's school, Harvard Westlake, there was a suicide, a 15-year-old
Oh,
girl. Yeah, yeah, it was really
oh, it's
hard,
awful.
and you think that, what is it about, a young girl that would want to end her life? It's
Right.
and it's great that you're teaching these tools to your kids, to be raising, your resilient teens, but also doing it mindfully as well too.
Right. Yeah, everything that all the protocols that I do with emotional blueprinting, I've taken them through. And I've seen a big difference in them as well, and the self-talk that they have and the belief they have in themselves. And so as a result of that, we started working a lot with teenagers, 12 and up, because they need to understand that they're worthy and they deserve it and all of those things. And a lot of them have these hidden beliefs that they're not. And so helping them through that so that they can go and accomplish what they want and they don't end up in a situation like, what you just described, which is just awful. That's one of our missions, is just to transform as many people's lives as we can through this 90-day protocol that allows them to go out and just execute and get all the wonderful things that they want and know that they deserve it. And so, when you get more strong, resilient people out there and high frequency people out there, they go out and, they bring other people up with them. And so it's just a way to impact the world in a much bigger manner, even just through, the work that we do.
So if one of the entrepreneurs or maybe, one of their teens, wants to do your program, how can they get in touch with you or find out more?
Yeah, so the best way is they could check out our website, which is emotionalbp.com. So BP like blueprint. Or you can just email me, and it's Rochelle at emotionalbp.com. It's ROCHELLE at emotionalbp.com. So that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. And are you also doing speaking engagements as well too?
I do. I do a lot of speaking engagements. Just love that interaction with the audience, and it's a lot of fun. And during those speaking engagements, I also teach people a couple of things that they can just do on their own that will get their, positive emotion like kicked up very, very quickly. And so I always want people to have a takeaway. So it's not just a conceptual discussion. This is how the subconscious works. This is why you're not getting exactly what you want. Here's something that you can do about it on your own, even if you never speak to me again. So make sure that there's some sort of a takeaway for people.
So it becomes really like an interactive workshop slash talk.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the interactive ones for sure. So we can make sure that people are actually getting something out of it and it's not just, me talking for a long time for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it may be. I hear
Right.
myself talking all day long, so I like to get the feedback from other people.
Yes. And you really want to be able to leave with tactics as an entrepreneur as well,
Yes.
right? Yes, we want to be inspired, but we also want to take something home that's going to be useful for us.
Right. And that's always, you sort of look at what would you want? I know whenever I go to a conference or listen to speakers, it's like, okay, you gave me a great concept, but what do I do? How can I use this? And so I'm always looking for like, what is that takeaway? Even if it's just tell me a book to read or tell me a podcast to listen to, but better yet, if you have a tip or a technique that I can use that's simple, I mean, I'm all over that. So I think it's important to give people something. It's like that gift. Here's the gift. Go use this. We teach them it right in the session, and then they just walk away with it. They know exactly what to do with it.
Well, you have been such a gift. Thank you for all the
Oh,
books that you recommended, all the tips and tricks, and I really, really enjoyed our conversation. Hope that we can bring you back, on the podcast and see how you're doing with any other programs that you're happening or that you're in
absolutely.
charge of. Yeah,
Yes. Thank you so much. It's been
so
really fun to
much.
talk to you.
It was great to
All
talk to
right.
you.
You too.